I stood at the podium, the hum of the Space Exploration Agency headquarters buzzing around me like the electric anticipation in the air. The room was filled with scientists, engineers, and military personnel, all eyes glued to the screen displaying the ominous image of the black hole they had dubbed Event Horizon. My heart raced as I prepared to address my team for what felt like the most significant mission of our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. We stand on the brink of a discovery that could redefine our understanding of the universe. The recent detection of radio signals emanating from Event Horizon suggests the presence of an intelligence beyond our comprehension. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. The murmurs of disbelief and intrigue rippled through the crowd. Dr. Thomas Reed, an astrophysicist with a reputation for skepticism, leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Captain, are we certain these signals are not just the byproducts of the black hole's chaotic environment? It could be cosmic background noise. I nodded, acknowledging his concern. That is a valid point, Dr. Reed. However, the patterns we've identified appear structured. This is not mere noise. We have a responsibility to investigate further. Emily Chun, our engineer, chimed in, her voice laced with enthusiasm. What if we're witnessing the first contact with an alien civilization? The technology we could uncover, think of the implications. Her eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. I could sense the growing tension in the room as Jake Foster, our linguist, stood up, his face a mask of determination. If this is a form of communication, we might have the chance to decode it. We could be their first point of contact. Imagine the potential. As I looked around at my diverse team, I felt a surge of hope mixed with apprehension. Each of us carried our own motivations, our own histories that led us here. I could see the shadows of doubt and fear in their eyes, but also a flicker of something greater, a desire for validation, perhaps, or the need to prove ourselves against the vast unknown. All right, team, I said, steeling my resolve. We will prepare for an expedition to investigate these signals. This mission could change everything we know about our existence. But we must approach this with caution. The unknown can be as dangerous as it is enlightening. A palpable silence filled the room, heavy with the weight of our collective decision. It was a moment that would define us, a leap into the abyss where we would either find answers or confront our greatest fears. As I stepped aboard the Odyssey, I felt a wave of anticipation wash over me, mingling with an undercurrent of dread. The air inside the spacecraft was charged with a mix of excitement and tension, the hum of machinery echoing in my ears. I could see my crewmates bustling about, each one lost in their own thoughts as we prepared for our launch. I glanced at Captain Sarah Mitchell, her brow furrowed in concentration as she reviewed the mission parameters one last time. We're about to embark on something no one has ever done before, she said, her voice steady but laced with an edge of uncertainty. Let's keep our heads in the game, people. Emily Chun, our engineer, was busy at her station, her fingers flying over the controls. I could sense her determination. She was the backbone of this mission, and I admired her for it. Just keep your eyes on the systems, she said, glancing up at us, her expression fierce. If anything goes sideways, I'll make sure we're ready to deal with it. I nodded, trying to shake off the gnawing anxiety in my gut. It wasn't just the black hole looming ahead, it was the unknown nature of the signals we were chasing. What if they weren't just messages? What if they were something else entirely? As we launched into the void, the roar of the engines drowned out my thoughts. I felt the weight of gravity release me, replaced by the weight of responsibility. I turned to Jake Foster, our linguist, who was staring wide-eyed out the viewport at the stars streaking by. What do you think we'll find? I asked, my voice barely rising above the noise. He turned to me, a spark of excitement in his eyes. I think we're on the brink of discovering something monumental. But I can't shake this feeling that we're not meant to find it. Before I could respond, the ship shuddered violently and alarms blared. What was that? I shouted, gripping the edge of my seat. Gravitational fluctuations. Emily yelled, her fingers dancing over the controls. I'm stabilizing the systems. Hold on. The ship lurched again, and I could see worry etched on Sarah's face as she barked orders. Emily, report the damage. Minor breaches in the aft section, but I can handle it. Emily's voice was steady, but I could see the sweat glistening on her forehead. As the ship steadied, I took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising tide of fear. We were supposed to be explorers, pioneers of the unknown. But in that moment, as I looked around at my crewmates, I couldn't help but wonder if we were stepping into a trap of our own making. Finally, we reached a stable orbit around the black hole, a swirling mass of darkness and light. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying. "Prepare to deploy the probe," Sarah instructed, her voice resolute. "Do you think the signals are a sign of intelligence?" I asked, trying to focus on the task ahead, pushing aside the creeping doubts. Jake pondered for a moment, his brow furrowed. "I can't help but feel that the signals are intertwined with our own existence, as if they reflect something deep within us." The weight of his words hung in the air, and I felt a chill run down my spine. What if this journey wasn't just about finding aliens? What if it was about confronting ourselves? As I watched the probe launch into the swirling chaos of the black hole's accretion disk, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursed through me. The screen filled with data streams, each one more complex than the last. "Look at this," I said, my voice barely containing my eagerness. "The signal patterns are so intricate. It's like they're alive." Dr. Reed leaned closer, furrowing his brow. "Alive? Or just a series of coincidences?" "We need to remain cautious, Sarah. We can't jump to conclusions. Caution is important, but so is exploration," I countered. I could feel the tension rising, the air thick with unspoken fears. Jake chimed in, "If we can decode this, we could be on the brink of understanding an entirely new form of intelligence. Imagine the implications." Emily, typing furiously at her station, glanced up. "Before we get too carried away, let's focus on the data we have. The probe is transmitting. Let's see what it brings back before we theorize about alien civilizations." Her pragmatism grounded us, but I could tell she, too, felt the thrill of discovery. Suddenly, the data feed stuttered, and a flood of garbled signals filled the room. My heart raced. "What the hell is happening?" I exclaimed, staring at the screen. "Hold on," Emily said, her fingers dancing over the controls. "I'm trying to stabilize the signal. We can't lose it now." Then, like a ghostly whisper, clarity emerged from the chaos. "It's forming a pattern," Jake breathed, eyes wide. "I think it's trying to communicate." But as we began to decode the first few sequences, the atmosphere shifted. The excitement turned to unease. Dr. Reed crossed his arms, his expression darkening. "These could be warnings, not invitations." "Or maybe it's a riddle," Jake argued, his passion igniting. "What if we're meant to decipher it? What if it's a challenge?" Before anyone could respond, the feed went dark. The screens flickered, and anxiety surged through the cabin. An ominous message flashed before us, composed of our own words, echoing our deepest fears. "Do you wish to know?" I read aloud, my voice trembling. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. "It's reflecting us." Panic erupted in the room. "What does that mean?" Emily shouted, her voice cracking. "It means we're not just observers," Dr. Reed said, his voice low and steady. "We're part of this." The implications of those words hung heavy in the air as we stared at the screens. The signals had become a mirror, reflecting not just our thoughts but our very souls, and the weight of that truth was almost unbearable. As I sat in the cramped control room of the Odyssey, the tension was palpable. The holographic display flickered, casting eerie shadows on our faces as we debated the implications of the ominous message that had just appeared. "This isn't just noise," Jake insisted, his voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. "It's a reflection of us, our fears, our regrets." "Or a trap," Emily interjected, her brow furrowed in concern. "What if the signals are a warning? We're not just dealing with an alien intelligence, we might be confronting something far more sinister." "Emily, we can't just shut down the investigation based on fear," Thomas replied, his voice steady but edged with agitation. "We need to understand what we're dealing with. If we don't decode these signals, we're essentially surrendering to the unknown." I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of our situation pressing down on me. We're already in the unknown, Thomas. We're orbiting a black hole. Whatever this is, it's affecting our minds as much as our systems. We need to tread carefully. Carefully? Jake scoffed, his eyes alight with fervor. We're on the brink of a breakthrough. What if we're the first to make contact? What if this intelligence has answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask? A heavy silence fell over the room. Each of us was lost in our thoughts, grappling not only with the potential of our discovery but with the shadows of our pasts that the signals had so cruelly laid bare. The air was thick with unspoken secrets. I glanced at each of my crewmates, feeling the fissures in our camaraderie deepen. What about your brother, Jake? I finally asked, breaking the silence. What happened to him? I know you've been carrying that weight. His face paled, and I could see the fight within him. He was lost in a similar way, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Chasing shadows, believing he could find something extraordinary. I've always feared I'd follow in his footsteps. None of us are here to chase shadows, Emily reassured him, but her voice lacked conviction. We're here to uncover the truth. But what was the truth? As we prepared to receive the next signal, a chilling realization washed over me. The black hole's gravity was not merely a physical force, but a metaphorical one, distorting our perceptions and blurring the lines of reality. The systems began to flicker ominously, and alarms blared as the ship trembled around us. Something's wrong, Thomas shouted, his fingers dancing across the control panel. The gravitational fluctuations are increasing. We need to stabilize the systems now. Sarah, I can't hold this. Emily cried, sweat beading on her forehead as she navigated through a series of complex commands. It's like the black hole is responding to our fear. Everyone focus. I barked, trying to instill some semblance of order amidst the chaos. Let's not lose sight of why we're here. We need to work together. But as the ship lurched violently, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being manipulated, our fears turned against us by an intelligence we barely understood. The darkness outside swirled with an ominous energy, and I found myself wondering if we were truly prepared for what lay ahead. As the signal washed over us, images flickered across the viewport, vivid and haunting. I felt the room grow heavy, an oppressive silence wrapping around us as the projections revealed our deepest fears. My heart raced as I watched scenes from my past play out in front of my eyes, my father's disappointed gaze, the moment I failed my first mission, the estrangement from my sister. The weight of regret pressed down on my chest like a physical force. Sarah, Emily's voice trembled, pulling me from my thoughts. She stood frozen, eyes wide as the image of her childhood home engulfed in flames danced before her. I can't. I thought I buried it. Dr. Reed clenched his fists, a grimace twisting his face as he faced his own demons. This isn't real. It's a trick, a manipulation, he shouted, his voice echoing in the cramped cabin. Is it? Jake murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, his gaze lost in the swirling chaos of emotions. What if this is how we truly connect? What if this is the intelligence trying to reach us? Connect? Emily snapped, anger flashing in her eyes. It's invading us. It knows us better than we know ourselves. I could feel their desperation, their fear feeding into the air like a palpable energy. We need to stay focused, I urged, my voice steady despite the turmoil. We can't let this break us apart. But the images grew more intense, more personal. I caught a glimpse of Jake, the pain etched across his features as he faced his own guilt, an old friend's death he felt responsible for, a moment that had driven him to seek answers among the stars. It was then that an idea struck me, a desperate grasp at control amidst the chaos. What if we confront it? I proposed, my voice rising with determination. What if we send someone into the event horizon? We could establish direct contact. The room fell silent, each of us grappling with the implications of my words. You're suggesting we sacrifice a life? Dr. Reed's voice wavered, disbelief etched into his brow. I'm suggesting we uncover the truth, I replied, my heart racing. We can't let fear dictate our actions. If we're to understand this phenomenon, we have to confront it head-on. After a long pause, Jake stepped forward, his eyes glinting with a mix of fear and resolve. I'll go, he said, his voice steady. I need to know what lies beyond. Maybe it's the only way to free us from this nightmare. Jake, no. Emily protested, reaching for him. You don't have to do this. But he shook his head, a soft smile playing on his lips. I have to. You all know I've been running from my past for too long. If I can face this, maybe I can finally understand what it means to be free. The weight of his words hung in the air, a heavy promise. I felt tears prickling at the corners of my eyes as we shared a collective moment of understanding. There was an undeniable bond forged by our shared struggles, and at that moment, we realized the gravity of what was about to happen. Just come back to us, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. Jake nodded, the light fading from his eyes as he prepared himself for the unknown. I will. I promise. The words hung in the air, a fragile tether to hope as he stepped away from us, ready to face the abyss. As I stood at the threshold of the event horizon, my heart raced with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Jake had just stepped into the unknown, and I felt a tight knot in my stomach. We're with you, Jake, I whispered, though I knew he couldn't hear me. The view from the ship was mesmerizing. Ethereal lights danced like fireflies, creating a kaleidoscope of colors against the blackness of space. This is it, I murmured, glancing at Emily and Thomas, who were glued to their screens. Look at that! Thomas exclaimed, pointing to a feed displaying swirling patterns reminiscent of a vast alien civilization. It's beautiful. But just as quickly as the beauty appeared, it was swallowed by an overwhelming darkness. Jake? I called out, anxiety creeping into my voice. The feed flickered, and I felt the air grow thick with tension. Jake, respond. Sarah, I think something's wrong, Emily said, her fingers flying over the controls. He's not transmitting. The signal, it's changing. A moment later, the screen filled with a haunting echo of Jake's voice, distorted and layered with an otherworldly quality. Help, trapped, can't escape, my heart sank. The realization hit me like a physical blow. No, no, no. Jake. I shouted, my voice cracking. The images on the screen morphed, revealing faces, anguished, desperate souls trapped in the void. They're lost, I gasped, understanding dawning on me. This isn't just a signal, it's a collective consciousness, a trap of lost souls yearning for escape. What have we done? Thomas whispered, his face ashen. The horror of our situation bore down on us, the weight of our curiosity turning to despair. We had ventured into the darkness, seeking knowledge, but instead, we had awakened something ancient and unforgiving. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, alarms blaring as the systems began to fail. We're being pulled in. Emily shouted, desperately trying to regain control. I can't stabilize anything. As the gravitational pull intensified, I felt a cold sweat break out across my brow. We were so obsessed with understanding, I said, my voice trembling. We've become part of the cycle, forever trapped, just like them. The ship shuddered, and I knew we were out of time. We need to, I started, but my words were swallowed by the chaos erupting around us. The realization settled like a stone in my gut, our quest for knowledge had led us to our doom. We were now part of their collective, bound to the darkness of the black hole, with no hope of return.